Keys to human nature. Of all the human emotions, none is trickier. Of all the human emotions, none is trickery or more elusive than envy. It is very difficult to actually discern the envy that motivates people, action, or that. It is very difficult to actually discern, discern the envy that motivates people's action, or to an or to even know that we have ये क्या लिखा है? Suffered. अच्छा, we have suffered and we have suffered an envy attack from another. This is what makes it so frustrating to deal with and so dangerous. The reason for this elusiveness is simple. We almost never directly express the envy we are feeling. If we feel anger toward people because of something they said or did, we may try to disguise our anger for various reasons. But we are aware that we are feeling hostile. Eventually, the anger will leak out in some non-verbal behavior, and if we act upon our anger, the target will feel it for what it is, and more often than not known, what caused the anger is that moment, in that moment. But envy is very different. All of us feel envy, the sensation that others have more of what we want: possession, attention, respect. We deserve to have as much as they do, yet feel somewhat helpless to get such thing. But as discussed above, envy tells that admissions कहाँ गया? And we entails the admission to ourselves that we are inferior to another person in something we value. Not only it is painful to admit this inferiority, but it is even worse for others to see that we are feeling this. And so and so almost as soon as we feel the initial pang of envy, pang क्या होता है? Initial pang of envy, we are motivated to disguise it to ourselves. It is not envy we feel, but unfairness at the distribution of good or attention, resentment at this unfairness, even anger. Furthermore, the other person is not really superior but simply lucky, overly ambitious, or unscrupulous. That's how they got to where they are, having convinced ourselves that envy is not motivating us but something else. We also make it very difficult for others to detect the underlying envy. They see only our anger, indignation, hostile criticism, poisonous praise, and so on. हाय विठल, कैसे हैं आप? हाय 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 रुचि, हाय, कैसे हो आप सब? हाय प्रिंस, हाय शुभम। शुभम, हम ह्यूमन नेचर के ऊपर बुक पढ़ रहे हैं। ये देखो, देखिए, in ancient time, those who felt intense envy might have acted upon it. In ancient time, those who felt intense envy might have acted upon it through violence, forcefully taking what the other had, or even resorting to murder. In the Old Testament, Cain murdered Abel out of envy. The brothers of Joseph threw him in a ditch in the desert to die because their father seemed to favor him. On several occasions, King Saul tried to kill the younger David, so handsome and naturally gifted, finally going mad with envy. Today, however, people are much more political and indirect. able to control any overt aggressive impulses and disguise what they are feeling. Instead of violence, enviers are likely to sabotage our work, ruin our relationships, sully our reputation, torment us with criticism that are aimed at our most basis and security. This allows them to maintain their social position while causing harm. Their target not even suspecting envy as the motivation. They can justify these actions to themselves as righting the perceived imbalance or unfairness. If someone is angry with us and act on it, we can analyze the anger this person is feeling and figure out a way to diffuse it or defend ourselves. But if we can but if we cannot see the underlying envy, we are inevitably confused by the hostile action of the envier. But if we are inevitably confused by the hostile action of the envier, and this confusion doubles the pain we experience. Why are people suddenly become so cold to me? What did that project fail to unexpectedly? Why have I why have I been fired? Why is this person against me? Your task as a student of human nature is to transform yourself into a master decoder of envy. Human nature is to transform yourself into a master decoder of envy. You are ruthless in your analysis and your determination to get to the root of what motivates people. The signs that people emit of envy are harder to discern, but they exist. And you can master the language what become effort and subtle discernment. Think of it as an intellectual challenge. By being able to decode it, you will not feel so confused. You will understand in hindsight that you suffered an envy attack, which will help you get over it. You might be able to see in advance that warning sign of such an attack and either diffuse or deflect it. And knowing the hidden pain that comes from one well aimed envy attack, you will spare yourself the emotional damage that can last for years. This will not make you paranoid, but only better able to weed out the false and fatal friends or colleagues from the real ones, the ones you can truly trust. Before immersing yourself in the sub, subtleties, oh, ये क्या लिखा है? Subtleties. अच्छा. Before immersing yourself in the subtleties of the emotions, it is important to distinguish between passive and active envy. All of us in the course of a day will inevitably feel some pang of envy as we unconsciously monitor the people around us and sense that they might have more. It is a fact of social life that there are always people who are superior to us in wealth, intelligence, likability, and other qualities. If these pangs rise to the level of consciousness and are a bit acute, we might say something hurtful or means spirited as a way to vent the emotion. But generally, as we experience this passive form of envy, we do not do anything that would in any meaningful way harm the relationship with a friend or colleague. In detecting sign of passive envy in others, for instance, little put downs and offhand comments, you should simply tolerate this as a fact of being a social animal. You should simply tolerate this as a fact of being a social animal. Sometimes, however, this passive envy turn active. The underlying sense of inferiority is too strong, leading to hostility that cannot be vented that could not be vented by a comment or put down. Sitting with one's envy over a long period of time can be painful and frustrating. Feeling righteous indignation against the envied person, however, can be invigorating. Invigorating. Acting on envy, doing something to harm the other person, brings satisfaction as it did to Jane, although the satisfaction is short lived because envious always find something new to envy. Your goal is to detect the sign of this more acute form of envy before it turns dangerous. You can do this in three ways: by learning the sign of envy that manage to leak through, by being aware of the types of people who are more prone to acting on envy, and by understanding the circumstances and actions that might trigger active envy in people. You can never see all of the actions motivated by envy. People are simply too good at disguising it. But using all three decoding devices will increase your chances of detection. Hmm. Probably a good idea to have the light behind the camera rather than behind you. Subtly, be silent. Subtly. Okay. Be silent. Subtly. अच्छा. Invigorating, energizing. Energizing. Thank you so much, Lai, for telling the meaning of these words. And today I don't want that all of the lights. So according to the timing, I off the lights and only low power bulb I on. So it's suits according to the time. That's why. Sign of envy. Although the sign are subtle, although the just a suggestion. Oh, thank you. I appreciate your suggestion. Although the signs are subtle, envious feelings tend to leak out and can be detected if you are observant. Seeing one such sign is in isolation might indicate passive or weak envy. Seeing one such sign in isolation might indicate passive or weak envy. You want to look for combinations or repetitions of the following sign, a pattern before moving to alert mode. Pattern before moving to alert mode. Micro expression. When people first experience envy, they have not yet fooled themselves into thinking it is something else, and so they are more prone to leakage than later on. That is why first impressions are often the most accurate and should be given added weight in this case. Envy is most associated with the eyes. The root of the Latin word for envy, invidia, invidia, means to look through, to probe with the eyes like a dagger. The early meaning of the word was associated with the evil eye, and the belief that a look could actually convey a curse and physically harm someone. The eyes are indeed a telling indicator, but the envious micro expression affecting the entire face, you will notice the envier's eyes momentarily boring into you with a look that suggests disdain and a touch of hostility. It is the look of a child who feels cheated. With this look, the concern of the mouth will often be turned down, the nose in a sneering, somewhat upturned position, the chin jutting out. Jutting. Right? Can you tell me the meaning of jutting out? JUTTING. Although the look will be a little too direct and held a little too long. Although the look will be a little too direct and held a little too long, it still will not last more than a second or two. It is usually followed with a strained fake smile. Often you will see the look by accident as you suddenly turn your head their direction, or you will feel their eyes burning into you without directly looking at them. The German philosopher Arthur uh, Schopenhauer 1788 to 1860 devised a quick way to elicit these bullocks and test for envy. Tell suspected enviers some good news about yourself, a promotion, a new exciting love interest, a book contract, you will notice a very quick expression of disappointment. Their tone of voice as they congratulate you will betray some tension and strain. Equally, tell them some misfortune of yours and notice the uncontrollable micro expression of joy in your pain. What is commonly known as Skadden, Skadden feud. Their eyes light up for a fleeting second. People who are envious cannot help feeling some glee when they hear of the bad luck of those they envy. If you see such looks in their first few encounters with someone, as Mary did with Jane, and they happen with more than once, be on the lookout for a dangerous and we are entering your life. Poisonous sprays. A major envy attack is often preceded by little envy bites, offhand expertly designed to get under your skin. Confusing paradoxical praise is a common form of this. Let us say you have Let us say you have completed a project, a book, a film, some creative venture, and the initial response from the public is a quite positive. Envious will make a comment praising the money you will now be making, implying that that is the main reason you have worked on it. You want praise for the work itself and the effort they want into and the effort that went into it. And instead they imply that you have done it for the money, that you have sold out. You feel confused. They have praised you, but in a way that makes you uncomfortable. This comment will also come at a moments chosen to cause maximum doubt and damage. For instance, just when you have heard the good news and feel a plus of joy. Similarly, in noting your success, they may bring up the least likable part of your audience. Similarly, in noting your success, they may bring up the least likable part of your audience, the kinds of fan or consumer who do not reflect well on you. Well, I'm sure Wall Street executives are going to love this. This is thrown in among other normal comments, but the guilt by association lingers. Jetting. Yes, jetting. This is thrown in among the other normal comments, but the guilt by association lingers in your mind. Or they will praise something once you have lost it, a job, a house in a nice neighborhood, a spouse who has left you. That was such a beautiful house. What a shame. That was such a beautiful house. What a shame. It's all said in a way that seems compassionate but has a discomforting effect. Poisonous praise almost always indicate envy. They feel the need to praise, but what dominates is the underlying hostility. If they have a habit of praising in this way, if you experience it several times, it is probably an indication of something more intense stirring within them. Backbiting. If people like to gossip a lot, particularly about common acquaintance, if people backbiting. If people like to gossip a lot, particularly about common acquaintances, you can be sure they will gossip about you. And gossip is a frequent cover for envy, a convenient way to vent it by sharing malicious rumor and stories. When they talk about others behind their backs, you will see their eyes light up and their voice become animated. It gives them a joy comparable to schadenfreude. They will elicit any kind of negative report. They will elicit any kind of negative report about a common acquaintance. They will elicit any kind of negative report about a common acquaintance. A frequent theme in their gossip is that no one's really that great and people aren't what they pretend to be. If you ever get wind of a story they have spread you uh, subtly or not so certainly negative, only one such instance should be enough to raise your antennae. What indicates active envy in this case is that they are your friend and they feel the need to vent their underlying hostility to a third party rather than keep it to themselves. If you notice that friends or colleagues are suddenly cooler to you than before for no apparent reason, such gossiping might be the source and would be worth for rating out. In any event, serial gossiper do not make loyal and trustworthy friend. In any event, serial gossipers do not make loyal and trustworthy friends. The push and pull. As we saw in the James Williams story, envious often use friendship and intimacy as the best way to wound the people they envy. They display unusual eagerness to become your friend. They saturate you with attention. If you are in a way insecure, they will have great effect. They praise you a little too effusively too early on. They praise you a little too effusively too early on. Through the closeness they establish, they are able to gather material on you and find your weak point. Suddenly, after your emotions are engaged, they criticize you in pointed way. The criticism is confusing, not particularly related to anything you have done, but still you feel guilty. They return they then return to their initial warmth. The pattern repeats. You are trapped between the warm friendship, and the occasional pain they inflict. criticizing you, they are expert at picking out any possible flaws in your character or words you might have regretted and given them great emphasis. They are like lawyers building a case against you. You have you have had enough and decide to defend yourself or criticize them or break off the friendship. They can now ascribe ascribe they can now ascribe to you a mean or even cruel streak and tell others of this. You will notice in their past other intense relationship with dramatic breakups, always the other person falls fault. And at the source of this pattern, something hard to discern is that they choose to befriend people whom they envy for some quality they certainly torture them. Is that they choose to befriend people whom they envy for some quality they certainly torture them. In generally, criticism of you that seems sincere but not directly related to anything you have actually done. In general, criticism of you they seem sincere but not directly related to anything you have actually done. Done is usually a strong sign of envy. People want to bully and overwhelm you with something negative, but both wounding you and covering any tracks of envy. Envy, envy, envy. Too many envy. Too much. Dun, 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 dun. ये हो जाएगा. Getting out of there like a jet. It just means really fast, like an yep. Okay, getting out of there like a jet. Okay, another name for airplane is it? Okay, jet. Ascribe. Say you have such qualities. Thank you so much. Ascribe. Say you have such qualities. कौन क्या जटे जटे मामा and weird types. According to the psychoanalyst, according to the psychoanalyst Melanie Kellin, 1882 to 1960, certain people are prone to feeling envy their entire lives. And this begins in early infancy. In the first few weeks and months of lives, the mother and infant are almost never out of each other presence. But as they get older, infant must deal with the mother absence for longer period of times, and this entails a painful adjustment. Some infant, however, are some sensitive to the mother's occasional withdrawal. They are greedy for more feeding and more attention. They become They become aware of the presence of the father with whom they must compete for the mother's attention. They may also become aware of other siblings who are seen as rivals. Clean, Clean who specialize in the study of infancy and early childhood notice that some children feel greater degrees of hostility and resentment toward the father and sibling for the attention they are receiving at the envious expense and toward the mother for not giving them enough. Suddenly, they are parents who create or intensify such envy by playing favorites, by withdrawing or on purpose to make the child more dependent. In any event, infants or children experiencing such envy will not feel grateful and love for the attention they do not get, but instead feel continually deprived and unsatisfied. A pattern is set for their entire lives. They are children and later adults for whom nothing is ever quite good enough. All potentially positive experiences are spoiled by the sensation that they should have more and better. Something is missing, and they can only imagine that other people are cheating them out of what they should have. They develop an eager eye for what others have that they don't. This becomes their dominant passion. Most of us experience moments in childhood in which we feel another person is getting more of the attention that we deserve, but we are able to counterbalance this with other moments in which we experience undeniable love and gratitude for it. As we get older, we can transfer such positive emotion to a series of people series of peoples, siblings, teacher, mentors, friends, lovers, and spouses. We alternate between wanting more and feeling relatively satisfied and grateful. Those prone to envy, however, do not experience life the same way. Instead, they transfer their initial envy and hostility to a series of others whom they see as disappointing or hurting them. Their moments of satisfaction and gratitude are rare of non existent. I want more, they are always telling themselves. Because envy is a painful sensation, these types will enact lifelong strategies to mitigate or repress these feelings that gnaw at them. They will denigrate anything or anyone good in the world. This means there aren't really people out there. There was envy. This means there aren't really people out there worth envying, or they will become extremely independent if they do not need people for anything that will expose them to fear envy scenario. Yeah, scenario. Acha. That will expose them to fear envy scenarios. At an extreme, they will devaluate themselves. They do not deserve good things in life and so have no need to compete with others for attention and status. According to Klein, these common strategies are brittle and will break down under stress. A downturn in their careers, bouts of depression, wounds to their ego, the envy they experienced in their earliest year remain continually latent and ready to be directed at others. They are literally looking for people to envy, so they re-experience the primal emotion. Depending on their psychological makeup, they will tend to conform to certain envying types. It is of great benefit to be able to recognize such type early on because they are the ones most likely to turn active with their envy. The following are five common varieties of enviers, how they tend to disguise themselves, and their particular forms of attacks. The following are five common varieties of enviers. The following are five common varieties of enviers. How they tend to disguise themselves and their particular forms of attack. The liverer. When you first meet them, liverers can seem rather entertaining and interesting. They tend to have a weak sense of humor. They are good at putting down those who are powerful and deflecting the pretentious. Pretentious. They also seem to have a keen nose for injustice and unfairness in this world, but where they differ from people with genuine empathy for underdogs in the laborers cannot recognize or appreciate excellence in almost anyone except those who are dead. They have a fragile egos. Those who have achieved things in life make them feel insecure. They are highly sensitive to feeling of inferiority. They initially feel for those who are successful is quickly covered up by indignation. They rail at high achiever for gaming the system, for being far too ambitious, or simply for being lucky and not really deserving praise. Too ambitious, or simply for being lucky and not really deserving praise. They have come to associate excellence with unfairness. They have come to associate excellence with unfairness as a way to soothe their insecurities. You will notice that though they can put others down, they do not take easily to any jokes at their expense. They often celebrate low culture and dress because mediocre work does not stir their insecurities. Beside their cynical humor, you can recognize this type by how they talk about their own life. They love to tell story of the many injustices inflicted on them. They are always blameless. This type makes excellent professional critics. They can use this medium to tear down those they secretly envy and be rewarded for it. Their main goal is to bring everyone down to the same mediocre level they occupy. Their main goal is to bring everyone down to the same mediocre level they occupy. This sometimes means leveling not only achiever and the powerful but also those who are those who are having not good at a time, who seem to be enjoying themselves too much, or who have to create a sense of purpose which laborers lack. Beware around such time, particularly in the workplace, because they will make you feel guilty for your own impulse to excel. They will begin with passive aggressive comments that taint you with the ugly word ambitions. You might be a part of the oppressor class. They will criticize you in ugly and hurtful ways. The way they may follow this up with active sabotage of your work, which they justify to themselves as a form of retributive justice. The self entitled slacker. In the world today, many people rightfully feel entitled to have success and the good things in life, but they usually understand that this will require sacrifice and hard work. Some people, however, feel they deserve attention and many rewards in life as if these are naturally due to them. These self entitled slackers are generally quite narcissist. They will make the are generally quite narcissistic. They will make the briefest outline for a novel or screenplay. They want to write or an idea for a brilliant business and and feel that that is enough to attract praise and attention. But deep down, these slackers feel insecure about their ability to get what they want. This is why they have never really developed a proper discipline. When they find themselves around high achievers who work very hard and have earned true respect for their work, this will make them this will make them aware of the doubt about themselves they have been trying to repress. They will move quickly from envy to hostility. Christopher Wren, 1632 to 1723, was one of the great geniuses of his age, a renowned scientist and one of the leading architects of the time. His most famous work being St. Paul Cathedral in London. Wren was also generally beloved by almost everyone who worked with him. His enthusiasm, his obvious skill, and the long hour he gave on the job made him popular with both the public and the worker on his project. One man, however, came to deeply envy him. William Tellman, a lower level architect appointed a Wren assistant on several important jobs. Tellman believed that their roles should have been reversed. Tellman believed that their roles should have been reversed. He had an extremely high opinion of himself. He had extremely high opinion of himself, a rather sore attitude, and a pronounced lazy streak. A rather sore attitude and a pronounced lazy streak. When a couple of accidents occurred on two of Wren's projects, killing some workmen, Tellman went into overdrive. Tillman went into overdrive, accusing his boss of being negligent. He dug up every other possible misdeed in Wren's long career, trying to make the case that he did not deserve his lofty reputation. For years, he waged a campaign to besmirch Wren's reputation, calling him careless with lives and money and generally overrated. He so muddied He so muddied the waters that the king finally gave some important commissions to the much less talented Tellman. Infuriating Wren, Tellman proceeded to steal and incorporate many of Wren's innovations. The ugly battle with Tellman had a debilitating emotional effect on Wren that lasted years. Be extra careful in the work environment with those who like to maintain their position through charm and being political rather than by getting things done. They are very prone to envying and hating those who work hard and get results. They will slander and sabotage you without any warning. The status friend. The status friends. These umbrella journalism he makes Liberals are usually middle class or upper middle class. Hmm. And what about muddied? MUDDIED. The status friend, a social animal, we humans are very sensitive to our rank and positions with any group. We can measure our status by attraction, by by attention and respect we receive. We are constantly we are constantly monitoring differences and comparing ourselves with others. But for some people, status is more than a way of measuring social position. It is the most important determinant of their self worth. You will notice such trend by the question they ask about how much money you make, whether you own your home, what kind of neighborhood it is in, whether you occasionally fly business class, and all of the other poetry thing that they can use as point of comparison. If you are a higher social status than they are, they will conceal their envy by appearing to admit your success. But if you are a peer or happen to work with them, they will be sniffing for any sign of favoritism or privilege they don't have, and they will attack you in underhanded ways, undermining your position within the group. For Baseball Hall of Famer Reggie Jackson, in 1946, his Yankee teammate Greg Nettles fit this type too. Jackson Nettles seemed extremely attentive to the credit and accolades others were getting that he was not. He was always discussing and comparing salaries. He was always discussing and comparing salaries. What embittered Nettles was the size of Jackson's salaries and the attention he got from the media. Jackson had earned the salary and attention he received through his he received through his betting power, no, betting prowess, prowess, and colorful personality. But the envious Nettle saw it differently. He thought Jackson simply knew how to play the media and cozy up to the Yankees owner George Steinbrenner. Jackson he decided was a manipulator. His envy leaked out in wicked jokes at Jackson's expenses, poisonous praise, and hostile looks. He turned much of the Yankee clubhouse against Jackson and made his life miserable. As Jackson wrote of him in his autobiography, I always had the feeling he was behind me. I always had the feeling he was behind me, ready to turn the knife. He also felt there was some tacit racism in Nettle's envy, as if a black athlete could not possibly earn a salary that much larger than his own. Recognize status friends by how they reduce everything to material consideration. Recognize status friends by how they reduce everything to material consideration. When they comment on the clothes you wear or the car you drive, they seem to focus on the money these things must have cost. And as they talk about such things, you will notice something childish in their demeanor, as if they were reliving a family drama in which they felt cheated by a sibling who had something better. Don't be fooled by their driving an older car or dressing savvily. This type will often try to assert their status in the opposite direction by being the consummate monk, the idealistic hippie, while secretly yearning for the luxuries they cannot get through hard work. If you are around such type, try to downplay or conceal what you have that might trigger envy, and talk up their profession's skills and status is whatever way you can. Muddy, a metaphor for dragging situation into the mud. कीचड़ में ले जाना. Oh, dragging situation into the mud. कीचड़. Okay, he so muddied the waters that king finally gave some important conversation. Hmm, he's so muddied. Thank you. Thank you so much. The attacher in any court-like environment of power. The attacher in any court-like environment of power, you will inevitably find people who are drawn to those who are successful in any court-like environment of power. The attacher in any court-like environment of power, you will inevitably find people who are drawn to those who are successful or powerful, not out of admiration uh, but out of secret envy. They find a way to attach themselves as friend or assistant. They find a way to attach themselves as friend or assistant. They make themselves useful. They may admire their boss for some qualities, but deep down they believe they are entitled to have some of the attention he or she is getting. They were entitled to have some of the attention he or she is getting. Without all the hard work, the longer they are around the high achiever, the more this feeling gnaws at them. They have talent, they have dream. Why should the person they work for be so favored? Why should the person they work for be so favored? They are good at concealing the undercurrent of envy through excessive fawning. But these times attach themselves because it gives them some kind of satisfaction to spoil and own the person who has more. They are drawn to the powerful out of a desire to harm them in some way. Yolanda Saldivar 1960 is an extreme example of the type. She started a major fan club for the popular Tejano singer Selena, then ingratiated ingratiated herself into Selena's business by becoming manager of her clothing stores and accumulated more power. No one was more sycophantic to the singer, but feeling deeply envious of the fame of Selena and turning quite hostile, she began to embezzle funds from the business, which she felt more than justified in doing. When confronted about this by Selena's father, her response was to plot to murder Selena herself, which she finally died at, which she finally died in 1995. This type have a trait that is quite common to all enviers. They lack a clear sense of purpose in their life. They lack a clear sense of purpose in their life. They do not know their calling. They could do many things, they think, and often try different jobs. They wander around and feel empty inside. They naturally envy those who act with a sense of purpose and will go so far as to attach themselves to such a person's life, partly wishing to get some of what they themselves are missing, and partly desiring to harm the other person. In general, be wary of those who are too eager to attach themselves to your life, too impatient to make themselves useful. They try to draw your they try to draw you into a relationship not by their experience and competence, but by the flattery and attention they give you. Their form of attack is to gather information on you that they can leak out or spread as gossip, harming your reputation. Learn to hire and work with those who have experience rather than just a pleasing manner. And work with those who have experience rather than just a pleasing manner. The insecure master. For some people, reaching a high position validate their self-opinion and boost their self-esteem. But there are some who are more anxious. Holding a high position tends to increase their insecurities, which they are careful to conceal secretly. They doubt whether they are worthy of the responsibility. They look at others who might have more talent, even those below them, with the envious eye. They look at others who might have more talent, even those below them, with an envious eye. You will work for such bosses under the assumption that they are self assured and confident. How else could they have become the boss? You will work extra hard to impress them, show them you are a person on the way up, only to find yourself after several months suddenly demoted or fired, which makes little sense. Since you had clearly delivered result, you did not realize you were dealing with the insecure variety and had inadvertently, inv- inadvertently triggered their self-doubt. They secretly envy your worth, your energy, your promise, and the sign of your talent. Even worse, if you are socially gifted and they are not. Even worse, if you are socially gifted and they are not. They will justify the firing or demotion with some narrative they have concocted. They have concocted. You will never discover the truth. Michael Eisner, all powerful CEO of Disney for 20 years, is just such a type. In 1995, he fired his number two man, Jeffrey Katzenberg, head of the film studio, ostensibly because of his abrasive personality, saying he was not a team player. A truth Katzenberg had far too much success in his positions. The film he oversaw became the main source of Disney's revenue. He had the golden touch, never admitting this to himself. Eisen clearly envied Katzenberg for this talent and transmuted into his hostility. This pattern repeated itself time and again with new creative people he brought in. Pay attention to those above you for sign of insecurity and envy. They will inevitably have a track record of firing people for a strange reason. They will not seem particularly happy with that excellent report you turn in. Always play it safe by deferring to boss, making them look better and earning their trust. Coach your brilliant ideas as their ideas. Coach your brilliant ideas as their idea. Let them get all the credit for your hard work. Your time to shine will come, but not if you inadvertently stimulate their insecurity. Your time to shine will come, but not if you inadvertently stimulate their insecurities. Light, suggest me some books so that after completing this book I will read those. few pages left. Yeah, can you complete it? Envy triggers. Although certain types are more prone to envy, although certain types are although certain types are more prone to envy, you must also be aware that there are circumstances that will tend to trigger envy in almost everyone. You must be extra alert in such situations. The most common trigger in a sudden change in your status, which alters your relationship to friends and peers. This is a particularly true among people in your own true this is a particularly true among people in your own professions. This had been known for a long time. As a Hesiod noted in the 8th century BC, the poetry the potter envies the potter. The potter envies the potter, the craftsman, the writer the writers. If you experience success, those in your field who have similar aspirations but who are still struggling will naturally feel envious. You should be reasonably tolerant of this because if the tables were reversed, you would probably feel the same. Do not take so personally their faint praise and veiled criticism. But be aware that among some of these peers envy can turn active and dangerous. Renaissance Renaissance artists who suddenly got commissions becomes targets for envious rivals who could turn quite vicious. M- Michel Michelangelo Michelangelo clearly envied the younger and talented Raphael and did what he could to sully his reputation and block his commission. Writers are notoriously envious of others' writers, particularly those with more lucrative deals. The best you can do in such situation is to have some self-deprecating humor and to not rub people's face in your success, which after all might contain some element of luck. In fact, when discussing your success with others who might envy you, always emphasize or play up the element of luck. Always emphasize or play up the element of luck. For those closest to you, offer to help them in their struggle as best you can, without appearing patronizing in a similar vein. Never make the mistake of praising a writer in front of another writer or an artist in front of an artist, unless the person being praised is dead. If you detect sign of a more active enemy in peers, get as far away from them as possible. Keep in mind that people who are getting older with their careers on the decline have delicate egos and are quite prone to experiencing envy. Sometimes it is people's natural gift and talent that will stir up the most intense form of envy. We can strive to become proficient in a field, but we cannot re-engineer our uh, physiology. Some people are born with better looks, more raw athletic skill, and unusual vivid imagination. or an open and generous nature. If people with natural gift also possess a good work ethic and have some luck in life, and we will follow them whatever they go, wherever they go, often making it worse for such types. They also tend to be quite naive. They themselves do not feel envy towards other, so they themselves do not feel envy towards other, so they cannot understand the emotion at all. Unaware of the dangers, they naturally display their talent and attract even more envy. Mary Shelley was all of this, gifted with a brilliant imagination and superior intellectual capabilities, and also quite naive. What is worse, envying types secretly loathe those who are immune to feeling envy. What is worse, envying types secretly loathe those who are immune to feeling envy. It makes their envious nature doubly apparent to themselves and stirs the desire to hurt and wound. If you have any natural gift that elevate you above others, you must be aware of the dangers and avoid flaunting such talent. Instead, you want to strategically reveal some flaws to blunt people's envy and make and mask your natural superiority. If you are gifted in the science, make it clear to others how you wish you had more social skills. So your intellectual clumsiness at subjects outside your expertise. John F. Kennedy seemed almost too perfect to the American public. So handsome, intelligent, and charismatic. And with such a beautiful wife, it was hard to identify with or like him. As soon as he, it was hard to identify with or like him. As soon as he made his big mistake in the failed invasion of Cuba, known as the Bay of Pigs, early on in his administration, and took full responsibility for the debacle. His polls numbers skyrocketed. The mistake had humanized him, although he was not done by design. You have you can have a similar effect by discussing the mistake you have made in the past and showing some selective awkwardness in certain areas that do not diminish your overall reputation. Women who achieve success and fame are more prone to attracting envy and hostility, although this will always be veiled as something else. Such women are said to be too cold or ambitious or unfeminine, often tend, often, oftentimes Oftentimes, we choose to admire people who achieve great things. Administration being the opposite of envy, we do not feel personally challenged or insecure in the face of their excellence. We might also emulate them, use them as spurs toward trying to achieve more. But unfortunately, this is rarely the cause with successful women. A high achieving woman inflicts greater feelings of inferiority in both other women and men. I am inferior to a woman, which leads to envy and hostility, not administration. Coco Chanel, the most successful businesswoman of her era, especially considering her origin as an orphan, suffered from such envy her entire life. In 1931, as the height of her power, she met Paul Irving, an illustrator and designer whose career was on the decline. Irving was an expert seducer, and they had much in common. But several months into their relationship, he began to criticize her for the extravagance and torment her about her other's flaws as he saw them. He wanted to control all aspects of her life. Lonely and desperate for a relationship, she hung on, but she later wrote of Irib. My growing celebrity eclipsed his declining glory. It loved me with the secret hope of destroying me. Love and envy are not mutually exclusive. It, it loved me with the secret hope of destroying me. Love and envy are not mutually exclusive. Successful women will have to bear this burden until such entrenched underlying values are changed. In the meantime, they will have to be even more adept as deflecting envy and playing the humble card. Robin Rubin, 1930, two-term Secretary of the Treasury under Bill Clinton, was a grandmaster when it came to masking his excellence and diffusing envy. He had begun his career at Goldman Sachs in 1966, slowly rising through the rank to become its co-head in 1990. He was one of the key figures who transformed Goldman Sachs into the most powerful investment in the most Sachs into the most powerful investment bank on Wall Street. He was a hard worker and a brilliant at finance. But as he became more powerful within Goldman, he also became more differential in all of his interaction. In meeting in which he was clearly the most knowledgeable person, he would make a point of asking for the opinion of the most junior associate in attendance and of listening to what he or she had to say with rapt attention. But when people who work for him asked him what should be done in relation to some crisis or problem, he would look at them calmly and ask first, "What do you think?" He would take their answer quite seriously. As one colleague at Goldman later said of him, there is no one better at the humility stick than Bob. The line "just one's man opinion" was something he would utter a dozen times a day. What is remarkable is how Reuben earned. Which is one of the best place to start. His theories have most been debunked, but it has exposed how people think. Robert John Greene pretty much uses his theories to write his book. Okay, once you understand his work through, move on to call them for actually useful way of things. Hmm. Okay, after completing this, I will go. Do you read any autobiography? Depends. Biography more than autobiography. Okay. So, do you read any biography? I read biography of Gandhi ji, um, yeah, and one more. Wait. Swami Vivekanand and mm, Gandhi ji, Swami Vivekanand, and Ramakrishna Paramhans. Till now, I read these three books. Autobiography or biographies are more interesting than these books. Those books are like a storybook that the more I go through it, the more I enter in a stories, like enter in a what do I say? Wait, those are controversial. You like controversies? Mm. I like great leaders, so that I, I'm fond of reading their books. And Ramakrishna Paramahan's book was so interesting. Once you started that book, na reading. Once you started reading that book, you will feel so good from inside and spiritual. I can't tell you. What controversial figures? I don't like controversies. It affects my mental states. I want peace and spiritual time. So that I like to read saint peoples. Gandhi is highly controversial. Yeah, Gandhi is highly controversial. But he's a great man, na? And great leader. That's why. I like Atal Bihari Vajpayee also. I don't know whether any autobiography is there upon him or not. But if I will got it, I will surely read. Okay. Okay, right. That's all for today. Thank you for being here and helping me a lot. Bye bye. See you tomorrow. Tata. Good night.